carefully watch my.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Bend Metropolitan Planning Organization Project Committee. The Bend MPO is a transportation planning organization. We have our own funding for our own budget, and we also get grants from the federal and state government. And so even though this should be fairly quick and easy, it is certainly an important budget, and we really appreciate our citizens who have volunteered to come in on a day like today. So we'll see how quickly we can go through this. My name is Barb Campbell. I serve on the Bend City Council as well as being the chair of the Bend MPO. How about if we go around the room and everyone else, we can introduce ourselves. James, would you start, please?
Sure. James DeRofi, my glutton for punishment and civic engagement. My most recent activities has been leading Vision Bend, a 3-year project, vision planning for the next 15 years. Other than that, I've been following transportation for a very long time. My first segue was working on east-west connectivity. When he was stuck, are we well above Bend Bikes guy?
My name is Ariel Mendez, and I'm Bend City Councilor and Policy Board member for the MPO.
Everyone, Phil Chang, Deschutes County Commissioner, MPO Policy Board Member.
Erin Seiler, I'm board member here, but I don't have anything special. I'm an attorney.
That's what makes you special. We are looking forward to
sad.
Janet Prager, I'm not special. You are. Yeah.
I've been on for a few years.
Bob Townsend, ODOT Area Manager and MPO Policy Board.
And would you ladies to like this?
Kelly Keating, Bend MPO staff.
I'm Tori Carter. I'm a senior budget and financial planning analyst for the city.
I'm Diane Appleby. I'm the senior planner with the Bend MPO. And I'm Samantha Nelson. I'm the finance director for the city.
Thank you so much for being here. Tyler, do you know, have we got anyone online that we should introduce? I don't see anyone either.
Where's Greg Bryant?
What's that?
Where's Greg Bryant?
Where is Greg Bryant?
He's traveling.
Oh.
I know. We're gonna try, via Zoom, but I don't know. I think he's in Europe somewhere, so.
Well,
It's fine. Like, you want to join this?
yeah, right. All right, thank you. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being here. Our second agenda item is just hybrid meeting guidelines. Tyler, would you talk to us, please?
So we have everybody online, so I'll keep this super brief. The meeting's being recorded. And that's all I have to say. So I haven't even about participants.
Thank you. Our third agenda item is an opportunity for public comment. This is a public meeting. If anyone would like to make a comment. And I don't see any hands or anything appearing online. So that moves us right on along to agenda item number 4. The Oregon Revised Statutes, ORS Chapter 294, governing municipal financial administration, states that the appointed members of the Budget Committee shall be appointed for terms of 3 years. Terms shall be staggered, so 1/3 or approximately 1/3 of the terms of the appointed members end each year. Statute also states the Budget Committee at its first meeting after its appointment shall elect a chairperson. Staff will discuss term assignments and ask the committee to appoint a chair. Tyler, I believe that means you when it says staff.
Say that again.
It says that Staff is going to discuss assignments and ask the committee to appoint a chair.
Yeah, I'm just saying we got in the packet and on the screen. Yeah, we show our community member assignments are up there. We have two members whose terms expire after this year. Both Chuck Arnold and Janet's terms expire, and so we'll be asking if they want to serve again and potentially opening up that process. And then, for state statute, we have to appoint a budget committee chair at each meeting, and so we'll open that process up now.
Great. We'd be happy to have nominations for chair of the budget committee.
I nominate James.
I just got here.
Would you be willing to serve, Jane?
I can serve, but I truly think it'd be better if we got either Aaron or Greg, since they are halfway through. I'm gonna be asking a lot of questions for the first few months. And I just think that's a bizarre approach.
I did it last year. Do you want to? I didn't.
I'll do it next year, I promise.
Sure. I'm not real sure what it means, but okay.
Tyler will guide you through it.
Okay.
It's pretty easy.
Run the meeting.
I know.
Staff makes it quite easy to chair these meetings. We're always grateful to them. We have a nomination. We got a second?
I say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye. And that means we have our new chair, who is Aaron Sealer. Is it
Siler.
Siler? Thank you, Aaron. And I will turn it over to you and enjoy my sandwich.
No.
Yeah,
No, what happens?
Basically, we're just gonna give you staff, we will start walking through our budget presentation and you'll have a little bit of. Well, you can call out folks who have questions and then at the end, we will coordinate.
You need me leaving right now?
No, we can just jump in. That's okay.
Just reading right along here, and then over on the other side, it tells you who is the person talking about that agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Could introduce this. No, if you want,
Thank
or
you.
you could just say something.
Thank you. So staff will provide an overview of the MPO work program, expected revenues and proposed expenditures by major work task areas and budget line item. Does everyone have the attachments? And this is MPO staff.
Yeah, so I will be calling on Andrea and Kelly to help me and Tori as well. And I'm just remembering now, James, you had requested one specific thing for today. And I was out of the office yesterday and I'm just remembering it now, so I'll have to.
I looked at the agenda, so I figured that. Sorry.
I will be able to give you an estimate of the answer, but he had a budget question, we talked to him last week, so. So just quick, we're gonna do a little bit of background information, just to refresh your memory of who we are and what we do. We'll talk about our things we're working on in our current fiscal year and what we have tentatively planned for next fiscal year. That's our proposed budget. So a little bit of background information. The map up here shows our MPO boundary, and it can be, hopefully you can see it okay. We're in the process right now of making some boundary adjustments. And the blue line is our current MPO boundary. So you can see that it extends down to Shoots River Woods, picks up a little bit of land to the southeast, east of town, west of town, and it extends out to Tumalo along US 20. The amendments that we're making right now, it's the faint purple line. Our areas we're adding, so we're adding some lands along US 97 south of Bend. We're adding the into the Seventh Mountain and Widgie Creek area, and that's a required change that the Census Bureau is telling us we need to make. Adding some land, a little bit of land on the east side of town, and we are working right now, looking at some potential modifications along the US 24 out to Tumalo, and we'll be bringing those to our board hopefully in the next couple of months.
Are all of those changes required or just the one you pointed out?
The ones that are required. The ones that are required is this area. My current plan. We need to add this area, that's, it's land that was added to the city's urban growth boundary. This area out on the east side is a required addition. The change here is, that's an optional change that we're making. That's we're adding basically to state out right of way. And in the Deschutes County Transportation System Plan, there's a long-term project to build a new interchange at the far south end of Deschutes River Woods. So we've rolled out that land a little bit so an interchange could fit within our boundary. Then the other changes are just what you see up here out to Tumalo, that combined geography. That's what the Census Bureau defined as needing to be in our boundary back in 2010. And you're hoping to clean that up just a little bit through this process right now. It's just lands that we would like to see added to that for future project purposes. Any other questions about this? I think one thing I would note too on here, it says that there's 410 roughly MPOs in the country, and we're one of less than 15 that only covers a single city. And so we're in a small, very small set of MPOs in that regard.
Tyler, I just had one request for that. So let's, in the future, if there's a possibility we could have that map that's like a Google, a real map, not just the imaginary lines on white paper.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how would you like that?
Just like like you look at a different filters, like to see actual like roads and construction there. Like, I mean, that way we would know that the big knockout there is Stevens Ranch and Stevens Tract, which is basically a dirt field right now.
Right.
Just things like that.
Yeah.
I think it would just help for further discussions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably just a button on your.
Or GIS map.
Yeah, and we're working, Andrea's been working with the city's GIS staff to get this done, and we will it'll be available electronically, hopefully by midsummer.
That was my answer.
Anything else to add, Andrea?
No, but I'll note that and see if we can do that for the next draft.
For the website, it's good. This makes it more personal.
Yeah.
And then those dotted lines are the required expansions. Well, no, you explained about
Yeah,
the south.
most of it is, but not all.
And so in addition to the federal government saying you must expand to some spots because of census data, we can also choose to expand a little further than that, which is why James is interested in this, It's not just we have to do this, check the box and thanks.
If the folks in Tumalo think that this is a conspiracy for the city of Bend to absorb that, you also have the option to tailor it and limit it.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, that was actually, thanks. That's another question I had is what if Tumalo doesn't like that? They don't.
Yeah, the county is at the tail end of completing a community plan process for Tumalo, and there was a lot of discord.
So how many people consider themselves residents of Temple? Like just. Which is, I mean, it's not, I know it's not incorporated, but.
There's the core.
Yeah.
And there's the kind of like unincorporated community core, but then there's a whole lot of areas surrounding that, 5 or 2 way that there's a lot of rural residents. I actually don't have a specific number.
But Tumalo proper, I mean, within the community plan, it's several hundred.
Several hundred.
But then beyond that, you get into that issue of people within 2-mile radius consider themselves Tumalo residents.
That's how people would identify themselves typically, within a certain radius. Up the top.
Do I move down or you?
You know, I'll just keep going. We have quite a few slides to get through.
Okay.
So just a quick refresher, the purpose of an MPO is, MPOs were created a long time ago with the idea of coordinating transportation decision-making among, jurisdictions within the MPO. And that goes back to that where I mentioned there's only 15 MPOs that have a single city. Most MPOs cover multiple cities, multiple counties in some cases, and so they provide an overarching transportation plan for that entire urbanized area. And then the other big thing is we receive distributed transportation funding each year. And right now it's averaging about $1.4 million per year. And we do occasionally get special funding. During one of the federal COVID relief bills, we received about $1.5 million that we distributed, or we've distributed most of that as well. Funding sources, we have, the big ones, it's the Federal Highway Administration is our biggest, consistent funding source. We also get some funding from the Federal Transit Administration, and that's funding that goes just to pay for our internal operations and planning costs, things that we're leading. ODOT provides the match funds for those Federal Highway Administration funds, and then we now also get ODOT state highway funds directly to us, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we have to provide some match locally for some of the grants or some of the funding that we have. And so we have to match those Federal Transit Administration funds. And we also have an ODOT safety grants and a federal safety grant. We will have to provide local match for those as well. Any questions?
What's the 5303?
That's just the way the Federal Transit Administration, they probably have 15, 20 major categories of funding that they distribute for a whole range of things. And they just have them numbered. Okay. And so each program has a number. And so for instance, the primary funding source that Cascades East Transit uses to operate the buses in Bend, it's 5307 funds.
Okay.
And then the funding that's used for the dial-a-ride paratransit system, that's 5310 funds. So there's many categories of FTA funds, and they're planning funds that go to MPOs and state DOTs. I have 5303 and 5304. So, hope that's not too much information, but
Give it to all of me.
yeah. This chart just shows primary funding sources, those federal PL and 5303 funds. You can see this is just a summary of those totals over the last decade or so. And you can see the numbers, they fluctuate, up and down a little bit. And through the way transportation funding works, federal government level, there's almost always a 5 to 6 year big bill gets approved, and you operate under that, and another bill gets approved. And so when the bill we're operating under now was approved in 2021, I believe, we started to see some big increases in our funding, for those first few years. And then we're seeing a bit of a decrease this year. That makes some of our planning, and over time with this kind of fluctuations we've had to get a little bit innovative in terms of how we do some of our budgeting and making sure we have sufficient funding to do the work we need to do. Any questions?
What are the items in red?
Those are when funding has decreased from one year to the next. So anything that's black on the right there, or increases in the red, are years where we've had decreased funding. We just have one slide here talking about some of our current work, or a couple of slides. One of the things we maintain is what's called Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, and that is very similar to a city or county capital improvement program. It lists almost all federally funded transportation projects within the MPO area. So that's something we adopt and maintain. And we adopted our 2024-2027 MTIP last year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Last year.
I'm not going to walk through everything that's on here. We've been getting a fair amount of funding for transportation safety work. We got an ODOT grant to do some implementation work. We did a little bit of work on that last year. We'll be doing more this coming year. Been doing a lot of work with our travel demand model, and that's a tool that we use for, it's used for project development, it's used for our long-range plans, it's used for city, transportation system plan update, comprehensive plan update, and you name it, it's used pretty heavily. And so we've been doing a tremendous amount of work over the last year or two to update that tool. Some of the things we have underway, the biggest thing right now is our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and that's our long-range transportation plan that will look out to the year 2045. And that document, that update is due in September of this year. So we are highly focused on getting that plan update completed to meet that federal deadline that we have. We received the second bullet, SS4A, that's a federal grant program. It's called Safe Streets and Roads for All. We received a grant through that federal program to update the Bend Transportation Safety Action Plan, and we'll be kicking that process off probably mid to late summer. I mentioned that we also got some ODOT grant funding for some safety implementation work. And those are kind of the three biggies, I think, on this slide. Do you have any questions about any of those projects?
So how often is the plan updated in the first one?
Every 5 years it has to be updated. And it's one of those, it's a hard deadline to get that updated. If we go past the September deadline, the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration could stop some funding flows into the Bend area if that document's not updated or adopted.
The safety action, is that bike lanes or
It's everything.
traffic control devices?
It's really looking at what we will do is we're starting to get that document updated. We will look at the last 5 years of crash data throughout Bend, looking at all crashes. We will prioritize. There'll be a few parts to it. We'll look at all the crashes of the last 5 years. We will, places where we're seeing really high numbers of crashes, we'll do some detailed work to look at how do we mitigate those high crash locations. But there's also going to be a chunk of this plan that's going to be very focused on bike and ped safety. There's a lot of our bike ped crashes. We have with a lot of intersections are going to pop up. We have a lot of car crashes at specific intersections, whereas our bike ped crashes tend to be spread along big, corridors like along the length of 3rd Street. We typically see a lot of pedestrians getting hit. So this plan will then look at how do you improve safety along the entire corridor when you don't have one distinct, there's one location where it's happening. It's more of a corridor-wide issue. And so we'll focus it, kind of drill into some of those issues as well.
Our cyclist and pedestrian fatality rate in Bend is about 2 to 3 times higher than the state average. Fatalities over the last several years of pedestrians and bicyclists have comprised about 60% or 65% of all fatalities in Bend. And the state average is, I think it's around 25%. Sounds right. So I think the focus is to try to I think also be proactive and future oriented as well, of looking at where are the problems, but also trying to anticipate potential future problems. So I'm really excited to see where this report.
Thank you, Councilor. It's a really good clarification because in the past, all prior safety planning stuff, it's always been reactive. You're always just looking back at what's happened. There's a lot of new tools coming online now that are going to allow us to be a lot more proactive and be. You can anticipate, and you can estimate where you think crashes will be happening to some extent, and so we're going to be able to utilize some of that information to help us be more proactive, make infrastructure improvements to help prevent future crashes from happening, particularly for bikes and pads.
Excuse me, is there an education and marketing component built into that?
Yes, and that's the third bullet, that implementation. Those are funds that we're getting from ODOT, really focused on that communications, education, outreach, and that the work that we're going to be doing through that, it's not focused just on that. We're going to be focusing on all of Central Oregon for that outreach. Excuse me. Any other questions?
So maybe you should ask this, but in terms of defining what a crash is, and even do they look at bikes hitting pedestrians, which seems to be happening more. And who would even track that, or how would that even be reported?
That's a great question. Historically, no. I mean, it's always been, I think the way the crash data, we get our crash data from the Oregon Department of Transportation. And the way they are required to collect data, there has to be a vehicle involved in the crash. And so it's vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian, or vehicle to bicycle in those crashes. If you have, a bicyclist sitting a pedestrian, the only way we will be able to get that is if we have, in the past, we've done a little bit of work. We've gotten data from the police department or the sheriff's department, and they will have some of that kind of information if there's been a call out in that situation. I don't know if we will be able to get into that level of detail with this effort.
Does the state collect anything from insurance companies?
That's a good question. I don't know if they do or not.
Well, that would be very incomplete data.
But I think the other thing too,
Kind of like overlap it with the other.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that because I know vehicle incidents happen all the time where the police are never involved.
There's that too, right?
But an insurance company, if it's more than a scratch, just to be involved.
I think this question really points to the challenge in this area because there's, the official state database looks at public highways, but doesn't include things like driveways or parking lots. St. Charles has their own data
Yeah.
that does, it may be more comprehensive in some ways than the police department's data. So I think this is a challenge, and I've definitely been giving some thought to how do we better share and collect and communicate this data, because I think it is an important part of informing the public about what's happening on our roads. And I think, it's a challenge.
So only public streets like private neighborhood with an HOA wouldn't pop up on any of this data.
No, and I think, you all raised some really good points too. And it reminded me that not all states, I mean, in Oregon's one of those states that you don't have, if it's just a small vehicle to vehicle crash, and the value of that, if the damage is below 3,500, something 4,000, they've upped it quite a bit. You don't have to report it to the state. And there's, 15 or 20 states that operate under that. And so in Oregon, we know we miss 30% of crashes, something like that, simply don't get reported. And so we know that the data we're getting is a significant undercount of what's actually happening out there. So, and we've talked in the past, we've looked into the police data a little bit. We've tried to talk to St. Charles or getting ambulance data and trying to overlay those things to see, but it's a big challenge. I mean, with the resources we have to be able to do that, to be able to layer all of the data and get a truly full picture of what's happened. So they do some of the things. Any more questions here?
I'm just gonna add a random percentage to all data in the future. That's our underreporting.
Yeah.
Plus or minus 30%.
Yeah. It's a big.
It's a margin there.
There. Only 60-70%. Yeah, okay, fine.
So I'll just jump ahead to where our priorities are for this upcoming fiscal year. Again, I'll mention, just highlighting Metropolitan Transportation Plan update that being due in September. That's going to be consuming, much of our time, at least in the first quarter of its upcoming fiscal year. But there's a lot of climate change planning and rulemaking that's happening. There's a little bit of work that we have to do at the MPO in terms of reporting greenhouse gas emissions on part of the roadway network within the MPO area. And then the first bit there, the Oregon Climate Friendly and Equitable Community rules. Those are rules that are impacting the city of Bend. But transportation is a huge component of those rules. And so we're going to be providing data and technical support to the city as they work over the next several years to implement those new planning requirements that come under that system. Updating transportation. Sorry, there's so many acronyms on here. Updating the Transportation System Action Plan, and then that region-wide message and communication, education outreach work. And then we still have some of those federal COVID funds remaining, so we'll be working with our board, hopefully over later this spring and getting those programmed by mid to late summer. Any questions on this slide?
COVID relief funding, is that, I mean, it feels retroactive at this point, right?
Yes, very
Okay.
much so.
So that's business, or is it businesses, is it, what is?
These were funds that were directed specifically for transportation projects. A lot of cities, smaller cities, counties and MPOs received these funds. A lot of cities just directed 100% of it towards street preservation, that type of thing. The city of, through the MPO board here, we took a little bit of a different track and we allocated some of those funds for transportation improvements for an affordable housing project, to buy some specialty equipment to help with bike lane and sidewalk maintenance.
And bus stops.
Yes, and bus shelters. Yeah, we'll be moving some money to CET hopefully in the next few months for construction of new transit shelters and some other high priority locations.
Besides, I mean, so we've allocated all those funds. Is there still remaining unallocated?
Yeah, we still have about 300,000 that needs to be awarded to projects.
That's a good.
I know it, right? There's money available. You don't hear that very often.
And what is there a drop dead date on those funds?
It's September of this year that we need to. They don't have to be spent.
Yeah.
Right. 2029.
Obligated.
Yeah, it's gonna be obligated by this fall, but then, as Andrea said, it's kind of odd, the drop dead spend date is 2029. So then it's really retroactive in terms of, utilizing the funds.
So how will you determine how to use the remaining funds?
We will have, it's either gonna be at our April or May board meeting. We're gonna open that discussion and talk about developing a process to allocate those remaining funds or award those remaining funds.
Good question. Yeah, that is on the priority is, when it says program, that's an entire process. How are we going to distribute?
Yeah.
Are we gonna put out a call to the universe saying we have this money? Does anyone have ideas? We know we would get thousands of responses if we try that. But yeah, no, that's a really good question, Janet.
September will be here soon.
Yes, it will. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So yes, in the next month or two, we need to at least get that process, I think, figured out. Okay.
And I mean, I would also just say that, if it might be fun for budget committee to kind of, track, and be present for, around, award deliberations and stuff like that. And I don't know how formally or informally we can do that.
It's up to the board chair.
We all better be there. Well, if it's possible for us to be there, will we get an invitation? Will somebody let us know? That's,
Yeah.
because I agree with you.
Procedurally, yeah. I mean, this is like, sitting on the county budget committee, like the most interesting, most fun part is actually seeing money going to good projects. So,
Yeah, we can definitely make note.
Is there a backlog of projects that have been submitted?
that specific pot of money.
No,
maybe
No,
not.
not specific,
But
probably.
I mean, there's,
In general?
there's many,
Oh,
many.
absolutely. Yeah,
And this backlogs.
yeah.
I was just trying to address do you need to ask the public for 1,000 ideas?
There are.
I was not really suggesting it, no.
I think, yeah, two things. There's an incredible backlog of
Okay.
transportation needs, and then that's only getting exacerbated by the massive cost increases that we're seeing for transportation projects over the last 5 years.
It could be really simple. We're a single city MPO, 60% of our just regular funding does go to pavement protection for the city of Bend.
Of our discretionary funding.
Thank you. Of our discretionary funding, we absolutely could just say, we'll just turn it over to the city of Bend and they can decide how to distribute those funds within. And then we can, that's how we got the street sweeper. The money went to the city with instructions that this is what you're going to do with the money. So we can make those instructions really specific, or we can say pavement protection.
Sure.
So that is one option. That is the opposite of asking the universe and giving you 1,000 suggestions. But yes, we'll be sure to include you. Those meetings are public meetings. So there's public comment at the beginning and end. And I will just tell you, I am generally quite informal about allowing folks like our budget committee members to speak during our meetings if you actually want to participate. So yeah, we'd be happy.
Barb's rules of order.
Barb's rules of order.
Any other questions on just our priorities for this upcoming fiscal year? If not, I'll start jumping into a little more detail. So we've broken up, we have our budget now. Historically, our budget, we just had a single program. That was our internal work program. We now have our work program. We have those COVID funds set aside as a separate program. And then we also have the discretionary money that we receive in the past. The board was charged with awarding those funds. ODOT held on to those funds, and what would happen after the board made an award, ODOT and the end recipient, they would directly enter into an agreement, and ODOT would transfer the funds to the recipient. That program has been completely changed, and now we are getting all of those funds into our budget, and we're going to be tasked with moving them out to the end recipients. And so I don't know if it's in the budget document or not, but if you looked at our current budget versus this year's, ours is significantly bigger. And it's because we're getting these new funds coming into our budget that we've not had to deal with in the past. So I'll first just walk through our internal work program, and then I'll cover those other two, the COVID and state highway fund programs as well. So within our work program and in the budget document, we break our work into 4 big tasks. And the first was program management. And that includes our budget committee, all of our advisory committees, all the ongoing budgeting work program things we have to do, coordination with statewide committees. And so we have representatives from our board. All of the MPOs around the state have representatives that meet quarterly. So we have the state, there's 8 MPOs in Oregon, and elected officials from each of the 8 get together on a quarterly basis to talk about statewide issues. We also do the same thing at a staff level. We have civil rights and environmental justice requirements that we need to meet. That falls into this program. Public participation efforts fall under this program, as do 2020 census related items that I mentioned under that. The boundary adjustments fit under that. We're going to do a little bit of roadway classification work as part of that. And the other big thing that's, I think, the most important to us is the way the funding is distributed for MPO operations. Each state DOT gets a lump sum, and then the state DOT is tasked with coming up with a process to allocate those funds to the MPOs within their jurisdiction, within each state. And so we're in the process right now of revising, or at least reviewing, that funding allocation method within Oregon. So, anything to add on that, Andrea?
Yeah, I think.
Can I ask, environmental justice, does that mean the natural environment, or is that actually talking about humans and the built environment?
Humans and the built environment.
That's what I thought.
Andrea.
Yeah, so we have a Title VI and environmental justice plan. So looking at where certain populations live, and then potentially looking at, projects that we might be planning, what impact or benefit populations is critical.
Thank you.
Yeah.
do you work with either the city or, I know previous work at the park district, there's an effort to do a lot of equity mapping. Do they share that information with you? Because it seems like it's the kind of hard work that you, if you can avoid duplicating, you would.
So we have our own mapping tool, equity mapping tool that we originally shared that with the city that they use to make theirs. Yeah, so we update that every year as new data sets come out. And then we've used that in the past, like for example, when we had our application process for our prior STDG funds for the smaller like PED or other types of projects. We also look, well, where are these projects located and put that's one of the elements that we look at to tackle the recommendation of whether or not that project should be funded.
What did you say?
But I know that the park that they also do a really pretty detailed equity program.
I'm sure you're aware of the challenge. Of course, the census tracts don't get that granular. And I think what they had done that was sort of innovative was to get property records from 911 databases to get a better estimate of things like density. And then overlay it with household income, primary language spoken, percent above certain age, percent of children, things like that to get just to try to piece together as much detail as possible. And I know it was a tremendous amount of work, but their concerns are different than ours might be. But nevertheless, it occurred to me if there was a way to say, hey, I've already got this in a GIS file, send it over. I'm sure they would be really, I think they're pretty proud of it. So I think they'd be happy to share it.
Yeah, I should. So right now we have a couple. So we use census data sources. So we look at houses with children, older individuals, zero car households, income levels, right, and minority populations. And then we also have one data set that's kind of a culmination of all of that, including crowded households. Another data set, and that was actually put together by ODOT. So we've used that, but I haven't looked at the parks one that they put together. But thank you.
That's some clarification. Use the term we, and I'm constantly getting confused. Is that we as in the MPO, we as in the state level MPO authorization group, or the federal?
We as
you
us
agree?
three.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to understand.
It's a very exclusive group.
Yeah. Wait,
So can I ask, I'm just curious, so there's 8 MPOs,
Yes.
like how many are around Portland? I'm trying to like mentally think of what.
Well, they
that
have-
would be.
That's where you get, like the Portland MPO, it covers.
Is it one?
Yeah, it's one, and it covers,
Portland Metro.
all of Multnomah County, big chunk of Washington County, a big chunk of Clackamas County. And there's multiple transit providers up there. They're all under that umbrella, all the cities, so they've got.
20-some cities, is that right?
So it's huge, it's huge.
Yeah, so they have one overarching transportation plan, for the entire metro area.
So then where are the others? I mean, like Eugene and
Heights
Salem.
or-
Yeah.
To Eugene, Springfield,
all the I-5 corridor, wherever
Yeah.
there's a population break,
Yeah.
how's it even feel?
Albany, Grants Pass, Medford.
So Springfield is separate from Eugene?
No, they're part of it.
Oh, okay.
It's a Eugene, Springfield, plus they pick up, the ones I'm mentioning, like, Salem, Kaiser, they pick up, a bunch of small communities outside of those two cities as well. And Eugene, Springfield it picks up some of these little communities in the metro area as well.
Mhm.
They help me
Only
hard
time until this MPO includes Brendan.
Right? I'm surprised it doesn't. Every time the census comes out, we're kind of wondering, is this the year?
So
yeah.
why isn't it?
It's population density.
Uh-huh.
And
I think it's Oregon land use policy in effect, right?
It is.
We do not sprawl
Uh-huh.
in Oregon.
Yeah.
And here in particular, you can really see that policy on the ground.
Yeah, 'cause if we didn't have the Oregon land use planning system, our MPO would be at least double the size it is in terms of, because you would see a lot more rural development between Bend and Redmond, you know, and going east, wherever you'd see, it'd be much larger MPO boundary because of the, you know, having a hard urban growth boundary and then having limits on the densities of development that can happen outside of city limits. That keeps our MPO boundaries a little bit odd. And I think, you know, the Oregon MPOs we've made the argument to the Federal Highway Administration many times that our boundaries they're much smaller than our travel shows in terms of how people move around in our communities because of the land use.
That's
system.
interesting, yeah.
Ocean of Burbia, that's what we have.
Yeah. Maybe I'll point out on the actual budget table, we have beginning working capital and a loan from the general fund listed on there, and those are, for the most primary funding sources that we received, the federal highway PL funds and the FTA 5303 funds, we receive those on a reimbursement basis. And so we are, you know, right now we're working on our March, or in the middle of March, we're working on our February invoice, for instance, and then we get paid for those, you know, late March, early April, something like that. So we are always behind, you know, in terms of our revenue flow. And so at the end of the fiscal year, to be able to legally close the budget, the city gives us a temporary loan to cover those for the months we haven't received our funding. And then we pay it back, you know, beginning of the new fiscal year. And so that's why that 100,000 is shown in there in two places. That's the end of the year loan and the next year's loan, correct?
Yep, exactly. So it's just to cover the cash ending balance. Our budget isn't on a cash basis. So the city provides what we call an overnight loan. So it's provided to the MPO June 30th, paid back July 1st. So it's just to show on the books when we close the fiscal year that we have a positive cash balance. It does look a little funny in the budget right now because our beginning working capital is significantly higher than we normally have. And that's because of the COVID award funding and new state highway funds that we'll have on hand. But because those are obligated externally, they can't contribute to the MPO cash balance. So that's why we still needed the overnight loan, even though the budget shows we have ending working capital available.
Let me ask, so if the reserves grow to above 100,000, I mean, would it be possible just to temporarily transfer or dedicate the reserve funds for your working capital gap?
Yep, absolutely. After, so the reserves are new this fiscal year. So I'm gonna work with accounting, but potentially we would not need the overnight loan now that we're starting to build a reserve within the MPO program.
Yeah, and I would say, and that is, as Tori said, that is new. We've never had a reserve. We've always been, it's the right term to say zero-based budget, but you know, it's like we get it, we spend it, and there's nothing left at the end of the fiscal year. So any questions on this task? Or any other questions? Right. So task 2 is short range planning, and we call that short range planning. We could change it. These are recurring things that we do on an annual basis. So maintenance of that Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. We have some performance tracking and reporting we have to do to the Federal Highway Administration on a regular basis. We have what's called an annual obligation report. It's one of our requirements, and that looks back on all federal funding that's been obligated within the MPO area in the prior fiscal year. That state highway fund management, that falls in there into this category. We're engaged in a lot of interagency projects and committees, that type of things that falls into this. And then we also we have ongoing coordination with Cascades East Transit on a number of different fronts with things that they're doing. I'm just going to back up and say one thing. So when you look at our budgets, those percentages by task, I always want to raise that loan issue because program management always looks disproportionately high, in my opinion. You know, when you have that 200,000 extra in there, if you pull that out, that percentage of actual work, you know, shrinks quite a bit. Any questions here?
Acronym UPWP.
Sorry, the UPW, is that?
In-kind local match.
Oh, so we have, one of our federal requirements is to develop, it's called our Unified Planning Work Program.
Okay.
UPWP. And so the document, you have the budget document is a greatly condensed version of our work program. Our work program documents probably 80 pages, 90 pages. It's there's a lot more stuff in there. And so we take that and shrink it into the budget document that you all received.
Thank you.
Sorry, yes, it's like we've tried to, hope there's not too many more unknown acronyms buried in here. So next big task for us is long-range planning. The big item here is that development, and maintenance of our long-range metropolitan transportation plan. All the transportation safety work falls under that, as does the climate change work that we're going to be doing. And you can see that the budget table, in comparison, if you could see saw last year's, it's much, much bigger this year. And the things I'll point out in here are the ODOT safety funds. That's that regional coordination around messaging and outreach within Central Oregon. Safe Streets, that's the federal grant that we're going to be receiving to update our safety action plans. That's $200,000. And those are, I guess, the two big highlights I would add on this one. Any questions on this work task?
Question regarding ODOT. So ODOT specifically doesn't deal with city streets of Bend or county streets, correct? Or do they? And is there like a separate map of what ODOT's responsible for beyond this? That I'm assuming it would be like Highway 97 and 3rd Street and like Greenwood, or like why does ODOT separate $95,000 funds from their other projects in regard to the Greater Bend area?
They have, how do you get into ODOT has the Transportation Safety Division, and within that division, because a lot of their, most of their money that they're getting is federal funding, and it's like a lot of the other, like I mentioned, FTA, those 5303 funds, there's category after category after category of federal funds. On the safety side of things, it's the same way. There are federal safety funds for construction, there are federal safety funds to pay law enforcement for overtime, like dedicated speeding, enforcement, you name it. And one of the things that one of the federal programs, there's dedicated funding for education outreach only. And what ODOT does, they utilize some of those funds. There's a lot of statewide messaging that happens. They also have funding available. They push out to cities, counties, and MPOs to do the same thing at a more localized level. And they have reached out to us knowing our safety issues that we have in Central Oregon and said, hey, we have funding available. Would you like these funds? And they've awarded us funds the last 2 or 3 years to do that kind of work specifically.
Yeah, it just depends on the color of money. We have a lot of money that's funneled through ODOT that can be used off system. A lot of our safety funds, like we have capital improvement money that half of it needs to go off state system, things like that. So it really just depends on what type of program we're talking about.
When I see ODOT safety funds at $95K and then ODOT safety local match $19K, I'm just,
the local match, that's money we have to come up with to match the 19,000 is the match we have to provide to that 95.
okay.
And so that's how it's shown. It's broken out that way so that we can track that from a budget perspective.
I like the color money beyond the fact it's green. We imagine it's a phenomenal. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's good.
Taking in like a good budget. What is this stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think for a relatively small, organization, there's a lot of different colors and like flowing in and out of the budget. So our last big task is mainly focused around that travel model that I'd mentioned. So doing a lot of work to maintain the tools that we have today, but there's also a big statewide effort looking at transitioning, Oregon, all of the MPOs in the state, we all utilize the same modeling software platform, which has been really beneficial. And we're in the midst of jettisoning our existing system and moving to a completely new software, platform for statewide, all the modeling in the states. That's a big undertaking for us. Household travel survey started last year, and there was a big data collection effort in the fall happening throughout the state, but it's really targeted into the state 8 MPO areas. The next big wave of that starting here in the next week or two will continue in early May. We utilize that data to help build our travel model and for other just data tracking purposes. And then just a lot of data collection and analysis that we do for the MPO. Question, Counselor?
There's so many. No, honestly, my brain is kind of thinking about future meetings of the board. And then specifically that household travel survey. We recently have been hearing a lot about the transportation demand model that comes like from the federal government. We're trying to use that data with regard to a transportation utility fee. And so that information, as far as I know, is where we know that across the entire country, people who live in apartments don't drive quite as much as people who live in single-family homes. So I will be curious to learn more in the future about that and this, if this is something the city of Bend can use to have better data about, because it's all links also to system development charges. This is how we charge SDCs, is based upon the idea that grocery stores generate more trips than a different retail store, for example. But we're not using local information for that. As far as I know, it's literally the entire country.
Yeah, my opinion, I would say that the household travel survey data, at least for household-based data, maybe not for like big retail, like
Right.
some of that national level retail data is pretty good. In terms of, because that comes out of what's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers.
Yep.
For some things, big box stores like Walmart or Home Depot and stuff, some of that national level data is pretty good. At the household level, I would say that the stuff that's being used there is, I think it's marginal at best compared to what we'll get out of this.
Great.
Because we know, based on the survey work we've done in the past, that trip making, whether you're in an apartment or a house, depends on a whole bunch of things. It's like this national level data. If you live in a single family home, you generate 10 trips a year is the data that comes out of that. And we know that's nowhere near anywhere accurate to what you see in the real world. It depends on how many people are living in the household, how many people are working in the household. Do you have children? How many cars do you have? How much money do you have is a huge driver. You can have we know that if it's a very wealthy household of 2 people, they could be generating far more trips than a poor household that has, say, 6 people in it, because their transportation costs are a much smaller chunk of their overall budget. And so it's not a black and white issue at all. It's, there's a big range of trip making characteristics that are driven by all sorts of different, factors.
So Phil's private jet uses more.
Well, I am excited about it. I really do. I feel like, we have been working with data that marginal at best. It's the entire country. And good. I do think this is.
The last time we did a big statewide survey was back in 2011, I think. And so it's been a long time since and so to see the changes that have happened, just in even the last 10 to 12 years, is pretty remarkable, with work from home and a lot of other things that really weren't in existence at that point in time. And so this will be a really good data set to help us with
So is it done yet or just, or not?
It's about halfway done. So there was big outreach and data collection effort in the fall. It was September, October timeframe, and now there's going to be an April, mid-March to early May data collection effort.
So are there things that have popped out to you as really surprising in the initial results?
I don't remember. I read just a high level summary looking at the first data collection. Nothing specific is coming out to mind right now, but I think the other big change that we're going to have now is when the last one was done in 2011, smartphones didn't exist. And so everything was done, everybody got mailed, a hard copy, little diary
Right,
thing.
yeah.
And you filled it out just for one
Right,
day.
you were saying you did that, right, Art?
Filled it out for one day, and we know that when people do paper-based surveys like that, they almost always undercount their trips because they don't think about, you don't think about certain things that you're doing as being a travel trip during the daytime. And so the undercount can be as high as 25% on the paper. The new survey, you can still do a paper-based one, but they have the option now of doing it on your phone. And that thing, instead of being one day, it's 7 days. And so it's capturing every trip for 7 days. And so our data collection is going to be far more robust than anything.
And that's statewide,
Yes.
and the cities that don't have MPOs are still gladly participating.
Yeah, I mean, they have targeted sample sizes within the state, within the MPO areas, but they're also wanting to reach a pretty broad swath of everywhere else in the state. And so I think the goal is to have 28,000 completed surveys at the end of it, 30,000, something like that. So it's a pretty big sample.
Just curious, because I mean, somebody who lives in Burns or Salem are gonna have two very different transportation
Absolutely.
realities.
Yep. Yeah, so there's there's a big rural data collection component of it as well, trying to, small communities and rural data collection to make sure that we understand what people are doing in their day-to-day lives. Because they use the system a lot differently than those of us who live in the city do.
You haven't finished compiling the results, right?
No, it'll be the second half of the data collection starting now, and then we will have the compiled results by the end of this year. So November, December, we should have everything for the whole state.
You don't share too much, you'll bias the rest of the respondents, like, you have to.
Want to do a survey?
Well, we might be they're doing all the initial outreach. I think it's via mail, postcards or something. So we may be getting notified here in the next few weeks.
Dear Diary, 6-pack picked up.
There was a small stipend being offered for me to participate. So
$20 or something. By the end of the week, I was like, this isn't worth $20.
75 cents an hour.
Well, it's every day you have to like reconcile all of your trips.
Yeah.
So if you don't link up the end of one trip with the start of one trip, it's like, well, you said you started this trip at home. Well, why did you end it? I think it's so. Okay. So it's like, but it was interesting. I think it brought my wife and I together. The kind of insight that you get from this is like, you get not just that individual, but because you're also gathering like, did you carpool? Was anyone else in your vehicle with you? Did you pick someone up? Well, if yes, then where did they get off? And so it's like, it's very detailed. Yeah, and I'm sure that the level of detail is unprecedented because it's all backed up by your smartphone data. And so you kind of just spend the time to be like, I didn't know I made this many trips. And
Exactly.
yeah, it was eye-opening for sure.
Why did my teenagers, what was that trip out into the national forest at 10 p.m. on Friday night?
I wasn't there yet. I can imagine.
I would do a time check.
Okay.
I'm afraid we are past our allotted time for our meetings, but we're all still there.
I'll keep plugging away.
Okay.
So COVID relief program, I mentioned that. I've mentioned we've received about $1.5 million and the board awarded about 1.2. So there's about 300,000 that needs to be awarded, and you'll see that the number here on our table is larger than that. And that's because we have those funds, we received those funds directly from ODOT. And some of the funds that have been awarded, we have not handed off to the end recipients yet. And so there's a combination of awarded but undirected funds, I don't know how you'd say that, and then our balance of funds that need to be awarded to projects. State Highway Fund Program, I mentioned that those revenues. So in the past, most of those funds would just go directly from ODOT to the end recipient. Those are all coming into our budget now. And so we have those showing up here. Any questions about this one? This table is our budget summary, and I'm not going to walk through everything here, but if you look, to the bottom right quadrant of the table, you can see how we have it broken out into those three big programs. So our MPO work program, COVID relief program, and the state highway fund program. And you can see that our revenues with the addition, particularly those state highway funds, as well as some of the grant funding, that's pushed our budget up pretty significantly compared to years in the past, years past. So today, again, the action requested is to receive your review and comment on that budget, and then to make a recommendation to our MPO board to either approve the budget as is or with modifications.
But the three of you find chiming in with your opinions before we our opinion to you. Does that sound good? Yeah.
I guess I would say I reviewed the materials for part of the budget. Nothing suspicious jumped out at me, so I nodded and said, yep, I think that's it. I'm very open to hearing additional insights from people who are over it, or don't care.
I'm over $1,000 now, so.
Yeah, I think one area that we talked about that I think we will have an opportunity to revisit in short order is the COVID relief expenditures. And I think where, just so you know, I think where our board is, and this is just my assessment, is we'll probably have a conversation about the kind of criteria. I mean, we've had conversations in the past, but haven't really formalized like some of the values that we think are important about things like benefiting the network as opposed to a specific individual project. Safety is an important value. Connectivity for projects that actually help people expand their options for how they get around, instead of being so reliant on driving. Things like this that I think we probably revisit in pretty short order. Make a decision about proceeding with appropriating that. But no, I think this is a pretty small, but mighty organization with three very busy staff members that have a lot of knowledge. And I come back to, I think the main mandate is planning and coordination. And when we talk about like the Portland area, for example, we're in a pretty enviable position, I think, because we still have the ability to really think ahead about how we want to grow, and I don't want to miss that opportunity.
I mean, if I can just say one more thing, there's a lot of stuff. A lot of the work of the MPO is prescribed. It's federal program, federal dollars do this, and staff does it well. But there's from a kind of over, policy board perspective, there is the discretionary expenditure areas, and that's, budgetarily, that's actually what's most interesting to me is like, oh, there's actually decisions that need to be made here as opposed to, this is, this is the federally prescribed and state prescribed activity, and, the goal is just, that staff does it well.
Okay.
I am also grateful, single city MPO, has advantages kind of both ways. City of Bend has Tyler and Kelly and Andrea working almost exclusively on City of Bend transportation. And then we, the MPO, have the advantage of the City of Bend's finance department, who make things like our budget pretty, from my perspective, pretty seamless and easy. And I really appreciate that. And I think you're right, Ari. I think that is the opportunity of our single city MPO. How are we going to grow? How are we going to merge with Redmond when that happens? We are in that position, and that's quite an enviable position to be in. Tyler, you thought?
Yeah, you say, Bob?
Well, I can just agree with everybody else. I think or Commissioner Chang, you said, I mean, there's so many prescribed things in this budget after, this is for 6-7 years of me doing it, right? That it really is pretty restrictive, except for a couple of those discretionary funds from the policy board. Like you have to do them tip work. You have to, you have to allocate the safety action plan funds that were given to you and things like that. So, we have a tremendous amount of trust in staff. So a lot of times it seems like we're rubber stamping it, but at the same time, it's these COVID relief funds. It's the other ODOT funds that are somewhat discretionary where we focus most of our time.
I was going to mention, we didn't have it in our slides, but one of the things we want to work on this next year is, we have all these prescribed things we have to do, and we have that laid out in a chart or a graphic. It's a 5-year work program essentially. And so we know we're working right now on our long range plan, and that's a very time intensive 18-month-ish, sort of process to step through. But then we know we're going to have some gaps coming up, or we're going to have the ability to be doing other things. And so we want with our board, with the board here to be like, hey, where can we be adding value to, all the things that are happening here, the projects you want us to pursue, to help the ODOT system, the city system, whatever that might be. And so we'll be working with you. That'll probably be like, mid to late fall sort of to start talking about that.
And I was saying that a lot of the work at the MPO is very prescriptive or prescribed. I don't that there's no value judgment associated with that. It's, these are really important functions that, are directed from either the federal, state level. And then, the budgetary aspect of that isn't that interesting to me. But then the work products are really interesting, like being able to sit on the policy board and see the output of certain plans and be able to ask questions about, how is that actually going to make things safer? Well, this awful congestion point in our community, like, how does this plan actually address that? Those are, there's some really interesting work, prescribed work produced.
Keep an eye out for the Transportation Safety Action Plan, because I think that the city does periodically, it's like on a 5-year cycle too, I think. But this one, I think, has the potential to be really different from previous ones for 2 reasons. One, because its focus is different and it's incorporating better data. It's proactive, includes things like a concern for equity. And I think that we have the opportunity as a city council that really prioritizes safety to take action on it. So I think that's one thing that will be really exciting to see come out later this year. That we'll be able to take action on, and that will be one area where this organization will really be able to produce something with big impact.
Just a wall of power over there. I mean, since you guys seem to be the accountants and the legal team.
I
know where all the skeletons are.
County perspective, you know.
Yeah, to Barb's point, you know, the city finance team supports MPO activities as well as other central services, so things like legal and like insurance, you know, any of those central services we provide within the city, we provide to MPO as well. So there is a line item in the budget for those interagency payments. So MPO makes overhead payments to the city for the services that are provided.
Anyone else? Well, as the chair, I will say that I think you have all done a beautiful job on the presentation. It's very clear, it's easy to understand. And I'm excited about this budget. I think it's very hopeful. I love that Bend and surrounding areas are aware that if we do things now, if we put things in place now, 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, we will be very proud that the city and the surrounding areas did this intentionally, diligently, with an eye to the future. I think that's something that you all should be really proud of. Thank you.
You're here.
Well done.
Great chair speech.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to thank, I mean, this was a more challenging budget than we've had in a while. And so Tori has been fantastic, you know, and she's kind of, and Kelly is new, she's only been with us for 6 months. And so she's pulled, you know, Kelly, I think, has a pretty good understanding now of the budgeting process. And then I was like completely disconnected. I was out of cell phone connection Saturday, Sunday, and most of yesterday. And I left things in sort of okay shape for today. And I got home last night and I was like, all right, I better see where things are. And the presentation looked awesome. So that's Kelly and Andrea for getting everything organized for tonight.
I do have one proposal for the next meeting, next year, I guess. Can we set it for 1.5 hours, just so that we, you know, can calendar it?
That's for one.
Yeah.
Calendar is one.
Oh, good. Then I was looking at this agenda, which shows us ending at 1. I'm glad we all have our calendar set for 1:30. Great.
That was optimistic.
Exactly. No, that's a good way to keep people on time.
All right, let's see.
So we just now need a motion.
You invite her.
I invite a motion to approve this budget.
All right, I move approval and recommend Bend BMPO Policy Board adoption of the BMPO fiscal year 2025 proposed budget as presented.
Very good. So,
I second.
everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good.
Great. For the record, we'll say out loud that it was Janet Gregory who made the motion and James Siroki who did the second, just for the minutes. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Nice job.
If I'm chair next time, I'll totally know.
I have said to many people that this is a great place to learn to be a chair. We are informal, you know, you just did a great job there, Erin. Good work. I will move to adjourn.
I have real.
Oh, wait, we do have another public comment. I'm sorry.
This is sort of for you three. I'd really like to look at everything as the greater Bend area, especially regarding this concept. So after what staff has told me about, especially regarding Tumalo, I think you guys should, if need be, allocate $10,000 or $20,000 to an outreach program to make, if what they said last week was that 60% of Tumalo is currently in the MPO, but the other 40% isn't. And this county's having a conversation about that. If I was you guys, I would really sort of push a direction of getting them to want to be a part of it. And the example I gave staff last week was I consider a Terrebonne and that interchange that's been going on planning for however many decades plus now.
Since Bob was just a glint in his.
So
It wasn't, yeah.
So from a greater Bend perspective, it would make more sense if Terrebonne was on the same page and realize that it's beneficial to them, that their long range plans are sort of, I don't want to say aligned, but they should be part of the process, which will give them a line. That's just my comment to you three moving
But
forward.
the problem is just that there is this really high level dynamic of folks in Tumalo who are very uncomfortable with growth and change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you say like, hey, how do you like, oh, it's great. How do you like having coffee job? Oh, it's great. Yeah, how do you like growth? That's terrible. It is terrible. And then, so there's fear of growth and change, and there is also a real concern about being swallowed up by the city of Bend. Which, I mean, there's a lot of land in between the UGB and Tumalo, but I mean, the anxiety about that is very real. And so you can do things like say, hey, because you're part of the MPO, we built this bike pedestrian underpass under Highway 20, which is really cool, right? And, let all these kids go to school and stuff. But it will only, I mean, you can make a lot of arguments for the benefits of being part of the MPO, but in the end, a lot of those like deep-seated fears and gut feelings are going to rule whether people want to be.
I hear you. That's why I love watching the county commission meetings.
I have one final comment here. I'm just reading this. So the public hearing to adopt the BMPO fiscal year 25 budget is scheduled for April 19th, 2024 at 12 p.m. Advanced public notice of the meeting will be provided as required by budget law.
2 weeks. That's
April 19th. April 19th.
I was gonna say, that's the public notice requirements to work on, right? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
5 days minimum.
Is that 5 business days?
It's 5 days, so
Five.
it's 5 days minimum, 30 days maximum.
Okay.
Other than that.
Did somebody motion to end the?
Oh, and we have it just public comment?
Oh, yes.
And a vote to adjourn. Done.
I would also say thank you.
Yes.
Resident community members, I served on a budget committee and I thought it was a great help in but also learned a lot. So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, I enjoyed it.